Hi, welcome to our maths lesson. Today we'll be learning about proportions. The aim of this lesson is to learn about and find proportions of amounts. So my learning objective is to learn about and find proportions of amounts. There are some key vocabulary we need to know. First, a proportion. Now, it is a statement that two ratios are equal, or you can say a proportion is a pair of equivalent ratios. Now, we know ratios, they indicate how many times one number is contained in another. For example, if there are 8 oranges and 6 lemons in a bowl of fruit, then the ratio of oranges to lemon is 8 to 6. And we can simplify that to be 4 to 3. In order to learn about and find proportions of amounts, there are 3 success criteria I want you to use. First, that you know and can say what a proportion is. And second, that you also understand that proportions are equivalent ratios. The third, to then find proportions of amounts. Now I want us to recap our previous learning. We know when we write a fraction like a half is a proper fraction. Now, equivalent fractions, they may have different denominators, but they are equal. 1/2 is equivalent to 5/10. Now, let me just set a scenario here. Let's say Joseph can read one book in 2 days. Now, we can write a ratio of books to days for Joseph. So, he can read one book in 2 days. And writing the units is very important. Now, for proportion, let's say Joseph reads books at a constant rate, one book in 2 days. He reads books at that rate for 10 days. How many books will he read? Now we know the ratio of books to days, one book in 2 days. So we can actually set up an equivalent fraction for Joseph. One book in 2 days. Now in 10 days, which is given in our question here, how many books will he read? Now this is how we will set up our equivalent fraction. So using equivalents, come with me to here and we will use cross multiplying to work out how many books. Now if I cross multiply 10 times 1, which is here, and then cross multiply 2 times n, which is also here. Now I can work it out. Now 1 times 10 is 10, but I cannot multiply 2 and an unknown. So 2n is 10. So if 2n is 10, 1n will be half of 10, which is 5. So that means 5 books. So I can now write the equivalent ratio, which is the same as saying my proportion. If Joseph can read one book in 2 days, that means in 10 days he will read 5 books. Something to take note of here. In order for two ratios to be equivalent, they must have the same value. So half has the same value as 5/10. Also, they have to have the same unit. They must be representing the same thing top and bottom. So for instance, book at the top days at the bottom, books at the top, days at the bottom. Now if I write this one here, like books at the top, days at the bottom, it's not the same as writing 5 pizzas and 10 days. So this is not proportion. Or if I say 1 book in 2 days and 5 days in 10 books, it's not a proportion. So they must have the same unit, top and bottom. Based on what we know about Joseph, we can predict other things about him. Now, this is what we know about him already. He can read 1 book in 2 days. So in 5 days, so in 10 days, he can read 5 books from our previous slides. Now let's say Joseph now has a stack of 23 books to read. How many days will it take him? Now we can do this in steps. In step 1, we can set up what we know about Joseph already. We know it's 1 book in 2 days. So in 23 days, in 23 books, given 23 books, how many days will that be? To solve this, we use a procedure called cross multiplying. We will multiply 1 book and n, and then 23 books and 2. Now if we take away the units for now and just do the arithmetic, so 1 times n is here, and then 23 times 2. Now we know our 23 times 2 is a value which is 46, and 1 times n is just n. So our n is 46 days. Okay, this is a second problem. The scale in the map shows that 5 centimeters on the map equals 9 miles on land. The distance between 2 towns measured 20 centimeters on the map. What is their distance on land? Now we can start by setting up what we know against what we don't know. We know from the question that 5 centimeters is 9 miles from the question. And then from the question also, we know the distance between the 2 towns is 20 centimeters. What we don't know is the distance on land. And then we can use this second procedure, cross multiplying, to work out n. So if I do that, let me use it here. 5 over 9 equals 20 over n. And if we cross multiply, we have 5 times n, which is here, and then 20 times 9, which is here. Now we know this already, so come with me, let's do the working here. Now 5 times n equals 20 times 9. These are values, so we can work that out. 20 times 9 is 180. But we cannot multiply an unknown with 5, so it's 5n. Now, but what we know in arithmetic is if 5n is 180, what is 1n? In other words, 5 lots of something is 180. What is 1 lot? So we know that we have to divide by 5 and also divide here by 5. So if I divide 5 times n by 5, I'll get an n. And if I divide 180 by 5, I'll get 36. So the distance on land is actually 36. Now what I want you to do is to pause the video here and try this for yourself. We'll look at the answers in the next slide. How did you do? Now the question was, Adrian can shred 45 sheets of paper in 3 minutes. How many can he shred in 7 minutes? So in our step 1, we set up what we know against what we don't know. We know that he can shred 45 papers in 3 minutes. That we know. We also know the 7 minutes. What we don't know is how many papers. So using our second procedure of cross-multiplying, we can attempt to work our problem. Right, so if we cross-multiply our equivalent fractions here, let me just take away the units and do it here. So I will have 45 times 7, which is here, and then 3 times n, which is also here. Right, come with me, let's do the working by the side. So I have 45 times 7 is 315 equals 3n. Now this is an unknown, so I cannot multiply it. But I know that 3 lots of n is 315. So what is 1 lot? To find 1 lot, I have to divide 3 times n by 3, which is here, but I must do the same on the other side of the equation. So 315 divided by 3 will give me 105. And 3n divided by 3 is 1n, which is here. So my 1n, or n, is 105. So that means the distance on land, so the number of sheets to be shredded will be 105. Now what I want you to do is to pause the video here and go and do the work. So when you go to the work, you will have your mild, which will be page 1, answers on page 2, your medium, which will be on page 3, answers on page 4, and your hot, answers, so questions on page 5, answers on page 6. Please do not look at the answers before the questions. Do the questions first. Now what I want you to do is to look at one question you did well, really, and show a guardian, or if they are busy, a sibling, how you did it. Show them the steps. Right, just for reflection, can you say what a proportion is? Do you also understand that proportions are equivalent ratios? Can you find proportions of amounts? If you can do all these, well done. You can now find proportions of amounts.